Meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to meeting number 45 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Today, we will be considering the Supplementary Estimates B 2022-2023. On behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome the Honorable Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and also the officials from IRCC. We are also joined by Christian Fox, Deputy Minister, Marian Campbell-Jarvis, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy, Hugh St. Pierre, Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister, Finance, Security and Administration, Daniel Mills, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations, and Catherine Scott, Assistant Deputy Minister, Settlement and Integration. Welcome, Minister. Thank you for joining us today. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into round of questioning. Thank you. You can please begin.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, dear colleagues.
That we're meeting today on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I'm pleased to be joined here today by several officials from IRCC, and thank you for introducing them. I'm here to talk about the Supplementary Estimates B as well as the Annual Report and Levels Plan that was tabled on November 1st. Happy to take questions on both of these matters today.
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss our government's plan for immigration to support the economy and our humanitarian commitments.
Canada is a destination of choice for those seeking to start a new life. We are a democracy that values freedom and human rights with good job opportunities, strong communities, and a high quality of life.
We need more people to fill job vacancies, create new businesses, tackle our demographic challenges, and contribute to our healthcare and social security systems. That is why our government has committed $1.6 billion to support processing and settlement of newcomers and the implementation of our 2022-2025 Immigration Levels Plan.
Increase to 465,000 new permanent residents next year and grow to 500,000 by 2025. Bringing more people to Canada will help fill job vacancies in the short term and fill skills gap in the long term. At the same time, we help our communities grow. We must, however, look at immigration not only through an economic lens, but a humanitarian one as well. Our plan supports our commitment to do our part to support some of the world's most vulnerable people. In this regard, I'm proud to report that we have now resettled more than 25,300 Afghan refugees and are more than halfway towards our goal of resettling at least 40,000. Of course, we're going to continue our support for Ukrainians who have found safe haven in Canada from the unprovoked war of aggression launched by Russia and the Putin regime. To continue our commitment in 2022 and beyond, in Supplementary Estimates B, we are seeking significant investments to support these newcomers as they permanently or temporarily transition to Canada and access language programs, schools, work opportunities, housing, and healthcare. En consacrant des réseaux.
By putting resources towards strengthening our immigration system, we are improving processing capacity and adding technologies to reduce backlogs created by the pandemic and to ultimately deliver a more effective immigration system in the years ahead.
Through significant investments, we've been modernizing our systems and expanding our workforce so we can help reduce wait times, address the backlogs, and return to service standards. As of October 31st, we have transitioned to 100% digital intake for most permanent resident lines of business. We've implemented online tools for clients to access updates on their applications and are expanding them further next year. Pour traiter davantage.
To process more files, reduce wait times, and reduce the inventory of applications, IRCC will have added up to 1,250 additional staff by the end of this fall.
These measures are going to help IRCC address unique challenges, including the backlogs that stem from the pandemic and back-to-back humanitarian crises in Afghanistan and Ukraine.
And it will help us come out on the other side of these challenges with a stronger, more responsive system to support immigration in the years ahead. We are already seeing some of the results of these enhancements.
For immigration, 2022 is on track to surpass it for permanent residency admissions, with over 431,000 expected newcomers this year. This includes 105,000 sponsored family members, nearly 85,000 refugees, including protected persons and those admitted on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. We've got countless stories, Madam Chair, as I conclude, on how members have come to Canada and made it a better place. Dr. Malhotra, born in India, has delivered over 10,000 babies in Saskatchewan, many in First Nations communities, earning her the name Angel of the North. Constable Mubiro of the RCMP is helping to build bridges between law enforcement and the African Nova Scotian community in my home province.
the stories of Serbian and Iranian immigrants in BC working to feed the homeless. Immigrants and those of us descendants of immigrants have helped to make Canada a better country. Once again, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm now happy to take your questions.
Merci tout le monde.
Thank you.
Minister, for your opening remarks. We will now start our round of questioning, and we will begin with Mr. Kimmich. Mr. Kimmich, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Too bad my voice is almost gone, so everybody's going to have to put up with it. Minister, you're supposed to come here for an hour. I wonder whether the minister would be willing to stay for the full hour, Madam Chair.
Yes, I was told. So we started at 3:50. We will end this panel at 4:50.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to shortchange you on time.
Thank you very much for that. So you're asking for $1.2 billion in the sub-Bs. The backlog is $2.4 million. It's almost the longest it's ever been. It's a little bit shorter than it was in August. It was $1.8 million right before the pandemic. This department has received more staff, almost 3,000 more staff since 2016, almost doubled its budget since 2016, and the backlog has only increased. Why should we give you another dollar? Why will it make any difference?
We're starting to see the investments that we've received so far pay off in significant ways. If you're interested in a fulsome answer, I can explain to you where the backlogs came from and. Yeah, sure. Well, look, long story short, since the end of July, we've seen a reduction in excess of 300,000 cases. This is the results of investments that we've made to add resources through additional staff, to relax administrative requirements that have reduced the capacity on our department so we can focus on processing more cases, and by adopting more technology. What we're seeing is an enormous increase in productivity, and despite the fact that there are significantly more applications coming in, we are still outpacing that intake with greater output, and have seen a reduction in the number of cases in the inventory in excess of 300,000. And these investments that we're seeking to have made today through the supplementary estimates process will further improve the ability to continue to chip away at those cases, because we're on track for major success.
Through you, Madam Chair, if that were accurate, there was an order paper question response submitted to my colleague from Edmonton, Manning, that showed your department is only meeting its service standards 46% of the time. And in fact, in the programs which are the most important to the economy, so like the Federal Skilled Worker and Skilled Trades program, it's only 16% of the time. There's another program, the one that takes temporary residents, temporary permits, and then transitions them to permanent residency. The numbers are equally abysmal. So you're telling me everything's going really well, but your own department's numbers, updated as of September of this year, says they're not getting any better. You're in a very low double digits for processing applications on time. So why should I believe anything you say?
So first of all, you didn't need to put in an order paper question to find that out. I asked our department to publish all that information on the internet so we can have the public continue to hold us to account, because I think transparency is really important. One of the things that I would point out about the way that you presented the data is that you're looking backwards in terms of how many applications have been processed as of the approvals that have come in today. What's really important is that's reflecting a really challenging set of circumstances that continue to exist during the pandemic, when people's travel and our processing capacity, frankly, had been severely diminished. If you look at the anticipated projections for people who file an application today, things are dramatically improved. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're perfect. We still need to improve. But by the end of the year, we expect study permits to be back on track. Near the very beginning of next year,
back on track for study permits?
A 60-day processing time for 80% of the cases.
But back in 2015, it took 31 days to do it.
Well, the service standard that we're trying to reach to enjoy the same standard we had pre-pandemic for study permits.
I said 2015, not pre-pandemic, Minister.
Yeah, so look, we expect to be back to the 2019 level of service standard that we enjoyed, that we broadcast online, early in the new year for work permits, by the end of the year for study permits. TRVs will spill into next year. For permanent residency, we're already back on track for family reunification and for express entry, 12 months for family reunification, 6 months for express entry. We're moving in the right direction. The job is not done, and I'm not here to tell you that it is.
Well,
we need to continue to make the
Minister,
investments
Chair,
necessary
when I'm looking at
to
the
improve
numbers,
this.
Temporary resident visas took 13 days to process back in 2015. These are IRCC numbers. Now it's up to 72 days as of April 2022. Study permits took 31 days. Now it's 88 days. Work permits took 42 days. Now it's 62. So I'm just wondering if things are getting better and all these investments are working. This is, since 2016, been pouring more and more resources into this department. More people, more money. The backlog has increased. It's not the pandemic, Minister. The pandemic backlog pre-pandemic was 1.8 million. It's over 2 million. And perhaps a little bit has been made better in the last few months, but this is a lot of resources we've poured into this department. And just these numbers I've quoted back to you go back all the way to 2015, and everything's gotten worse since then. So why should the people who are waiting to come into the country to study here, to come and work here, or are desperately trying to bring in that key worker to really get started in their business, why should any of them believe you?
So one of the key differences that you've left out in your analysis, Mr. Kimmich, is the fact that there are significantly more people coming to Canada. Look at the massive increase in the number of people applying for study permits each year. We're now at pushing in excess of 500,000. We've seen a 30% increase this year over the record the year before. And that was a 30% increase over the record previously. When it comes to permanent residency, the year before we formed government, there was about 240,000 new permanent residents admitted, and now we're coming up on 500,000 by 2025. So the number of cases in the system has certainly grown, but what we're trying to do is get back to a level where people can predictably know how long it's going to take for their applications to be processed, and very soon we're going to be there across our different lines of business as the result of investments we have made, and hopefully, if the committee adopts the supplementary estimates the investments we will continue to make. Yeah, I'll thank him.
Mr. Kimmich, and we will now proceed to Ms. Kaya Baga. Ms. Kaya Baga, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to start by thanking the Minister for coming to this committee again. He's come on a number of occasions, and I think he's the Minister that shows up in committees the most, so hopefully that's a good record to have. Minister, you have spoken often about your commitment to bring more newcomers to Canada permanently, and that it's a key factor in addressing our country's economy and our country's labor shortages. So that said, what do you think can be done to leverage the skills of those who are already here on a temporary status and ensure that they too are able to contribute in our economy?
Great question. Thank you very much, Ms. Kaibega, for the question. This is extremely important. So my view is that Canada needs more people for economic and demographic reasons, and a lot of people, I think, see 500,000 that we intend to resettle as, or rather welcome as permanent residents in a couple of years as a really big number. But it's really important, to the point of your question, to recognize that a lot of people are already here. They're going to transition to permanent residencies. There's a number of different elements to the strategy to continue to resettle, or rather welcome people as permanent residents who are already here. Last year, searching my memory, about 157,000 new permanent residents were already international students. The kind of things that we do to facilitate their transition to permanent residency include the extension of postgraduate work permits, include the automatic extension for those who are facing potentially soon to be expired postgraduate work permits. We want to continue to open up the NOC codes for different occupations. We recently had an announcement that will enable 16 new professions to qualify under the express entry system. We have a new tool that we're going to deploy this coming year that will allow us to more nimbly target people in key shortages, including in sectors that have workers who are here temporarily, to prevent them from leaving, from making it worse. There's other opportunities that I want to explore that were outlined in the response that we tabled to our colleague Randeep Sarai's private members motion 44, that include examining whether we should be doing targeted draws for people that are already here, continuing to look at the point system to see how it's going to satisfy people who've got Canadian work experience. There's no one silver bullet, but recognizing that people are using our temporary pathways as a stepping stone to permanent residency and planning accordingly is something that we must do. And next on the list is to make good on my mandate letter commitments that the Prime Minister's given to me to create a pathway to permanent residency for temporary foreign workers and international students.
My mic is on. I appreciate the answer, Minister, and I think that it would be important to continue to work together on this. You have tabled ambitious level targets and have provided a very good rationale as to why Canada needs higher immigration volumes, both immediately and into the future. I would like to know what the plan is on delivering these targets, and whether we know the impact of increasing volumes of applications as more people than ever want to come to Canada, and as well as the ongoing impact of the pandemic and the other factors that you have to factor in as you increase, such as backlogs, for example. And we know that we have an aggressive strategy to address backlogs, but can you speak on what we're doing in this area?
Sure. So when it comes to processing capacity for permanent residents, this is not something that has me concerned about our ability to deliver. This is not something that is a major problem that we need to overcome. We're already back to the service standard for permanent residency applications for family reunification. And as of this July, we are back to the service standard for economic class through the Federal Express Entry System as well. This is because we put a plan in place through the Immigration Levels Plan each year that is accompanied by the appropriate resources to make sure that we can continue to grow our processing capacity to match the number of people who we expect to welcome as new permanent residents. We still need to do more work to more quickly process people who are coming through temporary streams. You mentioned some of the pandemic-related challenges. Just to put this into perspective, there was a couple things that happened that put extra pressure on the system. The first is that a lot of our offices actually shut down as a result of local public health measures all over the world. The second is we made a decision when the border was closed to prevent the spread of COVID-19 within Canadian communities to welcome people as permanent residents who were already here as temporary residents, including through the TR to PR program that existed during the pandemic. We kept accepting applications during that point in time for people who couldn't travel at that point in time, and this created a couple of years' worth of applications in the system at a time when our processing capacity had been reduced. Layer on top of that the response to Afghanistan and then Ukraine, and as well the fact that Canada became the world's top destination to come to for people who wanted to move somewhere else in the world. We got a lot happening right now in our department. But by putting the resources into the system to hire 1,250 new people this fall, we're at about 1,100 right now, by relaxing some of the administrative requirements on the process, including relaxed medical examinations, moving to a digital space, and leveraging new technology, including advanced analytics, we've significantly grown our processing capacity. And I have all the faith in the world that we're going to be back in a serviceable and reliable processing standard time next year. You've got 1 minute left, so I'll stop my answer there and focus on what you want to talk about.
Going off of your last comment on Canada being a destination of choice for a lot of people, we have a proud tradition of refugees resettlement, and we know that we've been a leader on a global scale about that. Can you talk about how we are working to fill in major labor gaps in our labor market, the fact that so many people globally are displaced and are in need of resettlement, and what we're doing in that area, please?
In the 30 seconds or so, Chair, that I have left, we are not just a leader, we are the leader when it comes to resettling refugees. We have resettled more people in Canada than any other country in the world in each of the last 3 years, and more than 1/3 of the global total in each of the last 2 years. But to your specific question, recognizing that people who come as refugees have a lot more than they're carrying in their suitcase is really important. We have developed the Economic Mobility Pathways pilot that welcomes people as economic migrants who happen to be displaced. For anybody who might be tuned in today, look this program up. It provides an extraordinary opportunity, including for employers in my own community back in rural Nova Scotia, to tap into talented people who are displaced to fill key gaps in the labor force. It's something that I want to scale up. It's something that I want to share lessons with other countries around the world, and our capacity is the chair this year of the Global Task Force on Labor Mobility with the United Nations.
Thank you, Minister. Time is up for Ms. Kayabaga. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desep. 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to thank both the officials and the Minister for your time. You're very generous. And I think that you're among the teams who are best at being present at committee meetings, and congratulations. That's it for the flowers, and now the pot that the flowers were in, I'm going to throw at you. It's a good French expression. Could you tell us whether there is much being done in the research office for francophones outside Quebec in immigration? Before I begin, I would like to thank you for the flowers. I certainly enjoy flowers. I have good news for you. We have just opened a new office in New Brunswick for innovation on Francophone immigration as a major issue. It's very important. And it's important to bring up the number of Francophones coming into Canada as immigrants. I haven't much time. Is there any change in the personnel and the office that carries out research at IRCC for Francophones outside of Quebec. I think I understand what you're aiming at there. We do have a new office opened just recently in the last month, and it's important to continue to increase the number of spots for Francophone newcomers coming into Canada. It's essential to promote the French language and culture. So there's a new director at the research office for Francophone immigration outside of Quebec at IRCC. That's my question. No, I don't think so. But I will use my officials to provide more details. I think I could give you an appropriate answer. Thank you, Chair. We have sent resources to our team to improve our efforts on Francophone immigration, given that it is a priority in the department. There is that opening of the office in Dieppe that Mr. Fraser mentioned. How we will go ahead with that, the processing team and so on, we're still working that out. But the office is open and we have people there working on how to improve immigration of Francophones outside of Quebec. Are the people there at the management level bilingual? Yes. All of them? There's no Anglophone-only person at the research office. I would have to go through every single one of the members of the team, but I would say that the team that I work with on Francophone immigration is certainly Francophone. Very good. I'll check. That's not the information I have. Minister, how many contracts, and give us a figure here, the McKinsey firm, we hear that they received contracts from your department over the last years. How many millions of dollars worth in contracts did they receive, and what sort of contracts?
On the number of contracts and value of any contracts.
Yeah, we do have the information. On va partager ça, mais je dirais aussi qu'il y a eu des contrats en termes dans le passé, mais il y a aussi eu des programmes de la formation pour nos.
We do have that information, and I'll send it to you, but there's also training for our employees. Our Black Canadian officials who were looking for management roles and were trained to do so. This is one of the programs that Mackenzie offered us, but for the contracts, the number of them, I'll turn to my colleague. Yes, Madam Chair. IRCC granted 2 contracts to Mackenzie, one in 2018. That was a competitive bid, and a second in 2019. Once again, there was a competition for that contract, and the contract ended in 2019, and there's been nothing since. And what type of contract? It was for transformation of the department. Has your department ever consulted that firm on immigration levels for Canada? Not that I know of. Minister, are you aware of the Century Initiative that Mackenzie supported or ran to ensure that Canada have 100 million inhabitants by the end of the century?
OK, je vous l'apprends. C'est fantastique. Ce qu'on nous dit, c'est que Mackenzie est derrière cette transpartisan.
All right, well, I'm letting you know. We're told that Mackenzie is behind this all-party initiative, yet Mackenzie continues to receive contracts from IRCC. Perhaps there's some sort of an odd link there, and I submit that with all due respect. I've often asked the following question, including to IRCC last week or a couple of weeks ago. I asked it to the IRB and CBSA as well, asking how one goes about requesting safe passage and asylum, if you're an asylum seeker coming from the United States, given the safe country process, safe third country.
Oui, j'ai fait des recherches.
Yes, I've researched that. What I can tell you is before 2004, when that agreement didn't exist, if someone came to the Canadian border, the CBSA, we did not return them to the United States. We accepted them, and then the asylum request went through at the border. Yes, now, 2004, the agreement comes in at official CBSA offices, let's say not everywhere along the physical border, but at actual border crossings. Before the agreement was in place, a third of the asylum seekers came from the United States, but now, after 2004, the agreement's in place. That now applies only to the official points of entry And if someone comes in, we could send them back to the United States, saying that's a safe third country. What we're trying to deal with now is the Roxanne Road issue, because that is not covered by the current agreement.
Brunel Desap.
Merci.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister and his officials for coming to the committee. My first question to the Minister relates to the Hong Kong Lifeboat Scheme. Approximately 12,000 individuals have come to Canada and applied under that scheme. 6,487 people were approved as of October 2021. Only 45 had permanent resident status approved by January of 2022. According to the research from the Community Family Services of Ontario, 22% of the open work permit applicants graduated in 2016 or 2017, making them ineligible for the PR residency under the scheme, because by the time they complete their PR requirements, the degree of the limitation of 5 years would be over. And so, as the Minister can see, there remains substantial barriers for Hong Kongers to access the open work permit scheme, and is set to expire in February 7th of 2023. And no replacement has yet been announced. So my question to the Minister is, will he eliminate the 5-year rule to make the life scheme actually workable for Hong Kongers? And second, will he extend the program?
Thanks very much. So the program that you referred to, I think, has provided some unique benefits to allow people from Hong Kong to come to Canada, and I have no reason to question the numbers that you've cited. We wanted to make sure that we had a program that we could implement, and I think having some objective criteria on the timelines that we would work within to determine eligibility would have been important at the time. Of course, this was before my tenure in the position. We've not made a decision to formally extend the program at this stage. I'd be happy to follow up for further conversations if you wish. I would point out as well that access to Canada for people from Hong Kong has been made easy some years ago with the expansion of the ETA program to allow people to travel here more quickly. Different than a permanent residency stream, I'll acknowledge. But to answer your question, I think there's been some real utility to the program, but we've not made a formal decision on what will happen after the expiry of the existing program.
Well, thank you for that. I'd love to engage further with the Minister on this about the extension of the program, but also the 5-year rule, because the current situation in Hong Kong has not actually improved. In fact, if anything, it has worsened. And consequently, a lot of these students, if they do not make PR here, they will be sent back. And they will be faced with persecution. So, you know, these are real issues, and so I'd love to work with the Minister on that to see if we can find a path forward. I want to bring another situation to the Minister's attention. There's a group of 12 migrant workers, mostly women, in Niagara Falls, who filed for a vulnerable workers open work permit on November 9th. They're subject to harassment, racism, horrible things by the employer. And now, according to the IRCC website, the application, once it's received, the worker would be contacted by IRCC within 5 business days. For this group of workers, it's almost been a month. There's been no contact from IRCC whatsoever. Luckily, they are being housed by the union, by UFCW, who's brought this situation was brought to their attention, and so the unions pay for their accommodations so that they can actually be in a safe environment. And the union is ready and willing to line them up with employment. They have employers, good employers, who's ready to hire them, but they need that open work permit. So quick question to the Minister. I can get UFCW to be in contact with the officials to try and get this sorted out. I don't know why it's taking them more than a month when the standard is 5 days.
So first of all, thank you for raising this with me. I was not familiar with the individual details of this case. We'll discuss with our officials immediately upon the end of this meeting. For what it's worth, my view on the temporary foreign workers program is that we need to remain, to maintain the social license to have this program. We cannot allow employers to abuse workers. We need to provide an opportunity for people to seek alternative employment arrangements if they're in an abusive situation. I will undertake to have this conversation immediately when this meeting ends and revert back to you at my earliest opportunity.
I would appreciate that very much because these workers want to work and they should not be subject to abuse, and they've been waiting, and, you know, time is not on their side. Delays in processing for TRVs and study permits. The government website indicates that the processing time is 12 weeks. Yet our office and my colleague's office have been experiencing extraordinary delays in TRV and study permit processing applications. And this is especially the case for students or individuals from Africa and Iran. One student from Iran had to wait for over a year and is still on track to miss yet another semester next year for their study permit. And there's been no word, no matter how we try to phone the urgent case line, phone the inquiry line, there is zero information that could be provided. I don't know how this could be. African students, same thing. One student that we're aware of been waiting for 7 months. So I don't know if there is internal issues, systemic racism, which has been exposed within IRCC with respect to the Polaro report, or what is going on. How is it that cases, particularly from Africa and Iran, are so severely delayed and off the mark from the processing standards? I'm not talking about individual cases, I'm just talking about a class of people.
Look, thank you for raising this with me. It's no secret that we need to improve our processing times, and I think we've accomplished significant gains. I think the people who have been in the system for some time that are getting approved today have taken longer than what a new applicant will take who makes their application today. We expect by the end of the year that we'll be back to having 80% of cases processed within the 60-day standard, but there is a real issue that we need to continue to examine on people who come from particular countries, particularly countries that have a majority racialized population, because systemic discrimination is not okay with me. You referenced the Polaro report, some really troubling findings. That was something that we did proactively, and we should not hide from. We should embrace the change that we need to make, not just internally to our organizations, but the potential impact that our policies have from an outward-facing perspective.
I would
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. Thank you, Ms. Kwan. We will now proceed to Mr. Redekop. Mr. Redekop, you will have 5 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I don't know if you know, but I was born in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, so that makes me an honorary Ukrainian citizen. And, you know, back in the spring when Putin was shamelessly attacking Ukraine, you issued a press release on March the 3rd, and it said, quote, IRCC will quickly implement a special family reunification sponsorship pathway for permanent residents, end quote, and then you refer to working with the UCC. In September, you announced additional pathways to permanent residents, but it didn't include Ukrainians. So my question is, do you intend to open up this TR to PR pathway for Ukrainians, and if so, when should we expect that announcement?
Look, I don't have a date for you, and frankly, I thought we would make the announcement very shortly after the initial program, but our focus remained on getting people here more quickly who were seeking safe haven that needed to flee Ukraine. When we made the decision to extend the temporary status along with a work permit for 3 years, I knew that we'd established some time to develop the program in the appropriate way. We've seen a significant number, tens of thousands of people from Ukraine who've now come here, more than 80,000 under the SUIT program alone. And we want to make sure that we develop the program to get it right. We do still intend to develop a family reunification pathway for Ukrainians and potentially look at other ways to transition those towards permanent residency through the existing mechanisms should they wish to stay.
So as I look at the numbers that you've presented here, it seems like we're always increasing the budgets. So is the money for that program in these numbers yet, in these estimates?
There is some funding within the supplementary estimates B that pertain to the services for Ukrainians. I don't know if you have the figure right. Yeah, 162.6 million is to support some of the special immigration measures for Ukrainians. The different supports that we put in place included settlement services, included temporary accommodations, included income supports and other measures.
But I'm talking about the TR to PR program that you're going to be doing. Is that in these numbers?
No, this is separate funding for existing programs that we have announced that are in effect now.
So that's yet to come.
Yes, although the development of a new program when we're dealing with spaces that would come from an immigration levels plan would be tied to funding that's accompanying that specific immigration levels plan. So I don't expect that you'll see a massive increase in spending to accommodate it because it will be part of a larger plan to continue to grow our immigration
Speaking
levels.
of massive increases in spending, Afghanistan resettlement. So previous budgets had 258 million. These estimates are adding another 195 for a total of 453 million, just about $500 million. So for spending money, you get a check mark there. Now, results, though, there's another issue. I see on your website 9,000 Afghans have come in under the special immigration measures, 670 out of 5,000 interpreter family members. In the private sector, I was judged on outcomes. So here we're spending nearly $500 million, but a very small number of people have actually made it to Canada. So can you honestly, with a straight face, say that this program has been a success?
Do you know how many Afghan refugees came here under the conservative program that existed over 4 years before we formed government?
The question is for you, Minister. If you,
I'll tell you the answer. It's about 800, and we have now welcomed more than 25,000 Afghan refugees. If you think that's insignificant, feel free to take that message back to Yorkton, but I don't think that's insignificant.
The fall of Kabul happened under your watch, so I would expect that that's something that you would deal with. But I'm talking about the special immigration measures, and I'm talking about the Afghan interpreter family members. Those numbers are still relatively small.
So I don't think that this is small at all. We're dealing now, so far under the special immigration measures, in excess of, I believe, 9,000 folks who are here, and another 14,000 through our humanitarian programs. But to suggest that this is insignificant, it boggles my mind. More than 25,000 people who were facing persecution, potentially torture or death at the hands of the Taliban have been given a second lease on life. I have met them. They are living in our communities. They are people who contributed to our mission in Afghanistan.
Minister,
they are people who are...
What's not significant, certainly, is the amount of money that you've spent, for sure. But you talk about people that you've met.
Are you saying this was too expensive? Is your argument that it was too expensive?
My argument is...
Do you know how many refugees you committed to take in your campaign platform in the last federal election?
There are people
The answer is
waiting to come to
zero.
our country. Minister, there are people still waiting
The
to come
answer
to
is
our-
zero.
They're stuck in limbo in other countries. They're sitting in Pakistan and other countries waiting to come to Canada because the program is going so slowly. What do you say to those people who aren't here yet?
I say they're extraordinary challenges. This is like no refugee resettlement initiative that the federal government has ever taken on. The challenge is on the ground to move people through a terrain where the Taliban, a listed terrorist entity in Canadian law, has seized control, is not like anything we've ever seen before. This is not as simple as sending a plane to a UNHCR-run refugee camp where we can simply have people board the plane, fly to Canada, and land safely and focus on their resettlement once they arrive. This is a set of circumstances that is more challenging than any other refugee resettlement initiative imaginable. We are taking more people than any country on a per capita basis and one of the most substantial commitments in the world. 25,000 people is not insignificant. On the question that you're asking about biometrics, we want to insist that we have a rigorous process that allows people to have their security clearances done in advance so we can make sure that when we make a commitment to a person that they're going to land in Canada, that we can reliably project to that we're going to be able to welcome and resettle them in Canada. I'm going to continue to do everything I can until we make good to resettle at least 40,000 Afghan refugees. I believe it's the very least that we can do.
Thank you, Minister. We will now proceed to Mr. Al-Khouri. Mr. Al-Khouri, you will have 5 minutes. You can please begin.
Merci. Premièrement,
Thank you. To begin with, I corroborate what my colleague Alexis Brunel-Duceppe has said regarding your generosity, sir, having accepted to come and speak to us on a number of occasions to share ideas and to answer our questions, Minister. We know that a larger number of immigrants, newcomers, decide to live in Canada's large cities. Northern and rural communities, though, are facing labour shortages. Data is showing progress, though, and we now see that over the last few years, our policies and our investments have contributed to increasing the number of newcomers who set up in small communities. But we need to do more in this regard. Minister, can you share with us what's being done to attract and keep newcomers in small communities and rural communities of Canada? Thank you. I'm happy to be here and to give you my time because I really enjoy all the members of this committee and all their questions.
Question for me. One of the main reasons I wanted to get involved in politics is I saw that social changes happening in the communities that I represent and rural Nova Scotia were having a devastating impact that did not paint a pretty picture for the future of small town and rural Canada. I don't know that I've shared this with you before, but two of the hot issues during the 2015 election campaign in my own constituency involved the closure of the River John Elementary School and the loss of the mental health unit at the Aberdeen Hospital, the largest regional hospital in northern Nova Scotia. The reason we had to see that school close was the depopulation of the small community. The reason we lost the mental health unit was the loss of a psychiatrist, and they couldn't safely operate it when a professional moved out of town. One of the main things I hope to accomplish during my tenure, as long as I have the privilege of holding it, is to make sure that we share the benefits of immigration to every community, including small towns and rural communities. We have put a plan in place as part of this year's immigration levels plan to make sure that we can achieve that outcome. You will probably notice that there is a significant increase in the regionalization of immigration numbers, a huge increase in the Atlantic immigration program where communities have the capacity to take more people, a significant increase in the provincial nominee programs where provinces can push people to communities that have the capacity to successfully settle them, an increase this summer to an expanded rural and northern immigration pilot program where we took feedback from the communities to actually better serve the interests of the communities that benefit from it, new flexibilities in the express entry system that allow us to do targeted draws, not just by region, but also by the sector in which those regions have the highest labor market needs. Every single day, I ask myself, what can I do to help small communities survive? Big cities will always be a magnet for newcomers. They are some of the coolest places to live anywhere in the world with the most opportunities. But small towns are extraordinary places to live as well. Rural communities like the one I grew up in are extraordinary places as well. And to see that we've been able to put in place a plan that will help deliver more people to communities to make sure that our conversations are about growth, not schools and hospital closing, is going to be one of the most important things I can imagine accomplishing in this job.
Merci. Vraiment, c'est...
Thank you. That's most encouraging, Minister. Canada has a proud tradition of settling refugees. And we know that we are seen as a world leader in this regard. I think that all of us around the table here can agree that Canada should continue to do everything it can to support the most vulnerable of the world. But we also need to face up to the fact that our economy needs workers. What are you doing, Minister, to establish a balance between the need to fill important positions, given the labor shortage, and the fact that many people are facing difficulties as migrants in general and need new homes?
So there's a couple of different things, and it's important to c'est important de reconnaître qu'il n'y a pas une.
It's important to recognize that there's no such thing as a perfect immigration plan, but it's important that the government consider ways to bring in more newcomers who are able to contribute to our economy, and also increase the number of people who are highly vulnerable, who need a place to settle and to live, are also taken care of.
And the needs of the Canadian economy, and to determine how many people can we bring in that will be set up for success, not just to be brought here, but to actually be set up for success. Changing the rules to make sure that the people who are going to be chosen to come in for economic reasons to, in a more tailored way, meet the needs of the Canadian economy is a big part of the path forward. But at the same time, we want to continue to be a world leader. And I think one of the beautiful things about Canada is the multi-partisan support for large immigration numbers. And I'll conclude on this, Madam Chair, because my time is up. We have settled more refugees than any country in the world in each of the last 3 years. This is a tradition that I think we should continue regardless of who is in government for many years to come.
Thank you. Merci.
We'll now proceed to Mr. Brunel-Desep for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Brunel-Desep.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Chair. You know, Minister, that there is a prior director of Mackenzie, Mr. Barton, who was named ambassador to China by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who suggested the government accept 400 and some thousand immigrants a year. That was in 2016, and that's actually what's going on now. So to what extent does this Mackenzie company have an influence on our immigration levels in Canada?
Mr. Barton, I did not know he made that recommendation and landed on the numbers included in this year's immigration levels plan upon independent reflection on what we ought to do and how many people I think we can process and successfully resettle in Canada.
Donc, vous dites que la firme
So you're telling me that the Mackenzie firm had nothing to do with this?
I had no involvement with McKinsey. Is it possible they have been one of the previous reports given feedback to the department? I would defer to our officials if that's ever been the case, but it did not inform my decision making.
Parfait. Vous êtes conscient que McKinsey...
Very well. Are you aware that Mackenzie, at present, there's a legal investigation underway in France regarding their the role they may have played in French elections? Why is it that the Government of Canada is still dealing with a firm which, in world level, is involved in international legal cases? I have no information on this issue. I will send it through to you. You'll see it's pretty clear. Next, you've told us that the safe third country issue, last time you spoke to us, you said it was an imperfect agreement. But that was a number of years ago, because we've been hearing that it's been 4 years we're trying to renegotiate it. Why not suspend it for a while? You've also said that if we were to suspend it, many more people would be making asylum requests here in Canada. But this seems to be like your opinion. No one has shown something documented that more people would request asylum. If we suspended it for 3 months, we would see if that were the case. Don't you think we should just try it?
We should just try it. I think it is a potentially dangerous idea. In addition to making sure we deal respectfully with our
Why dangerous?
bilateral basis, I don't believe that suspending the agreement is a good idea. I think having an agreement that respects the safe third country principle is something we ought to do. I have serious concerns, not just about the people who make that last step of the journey to cross the border, but about the number of people who will be fleeing
Les associations de défense des migrants vous ont...
Yes, but immigration defense groups have taken you to the Supreme Court about this agreement. There was a judgment in 2020 that came down, and you appealed it in order to, bypass it. Why is it that those who are trying to defend immigration, say lawyers and so on, and civil society, they all want to suspend the thing except for you?
Okay, perhaps I'll give a response after the meeting to my friend.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just for all the members and the witnesses, all the questions should be directed through the chair. With that, we will now go to Ms. Kwan for 2.5 minutes. Ms. Kwan, you can please begin.
Thank you. The minister advised that it is important for everyone to know the processing standards for their application, but yet on the IRCC website, not every stream has that information on it on the public domain. Will the minister commit to ensure that in every single immigration stream that there would be processing standards on the IRCC website so people can know and plan?
As a general rule, yes, I think we should, with one caveat. There are certain instances where it's extremely difficult to be able to reliably project because the allocation of spaces in the immigration levels plan will be far less than the global demand of people who would like to come under those. That can make it very difficult to project with any reliability how long it ought to take, but where we can make a reliable projection, we ought to.
Yeah, perhaps the minister can actually put that as a caveat on the IRCC website so people know. Because right now, for example, with respect to processing of refugee travel documents and certificate of identity, there is actually no processing timeline. People have no idea, even though they're desperately in need of trying to go back to visit loved ones. I can sort of go on with the list, and I won't because I only have 2 minutes or something. But suffice to say, that needs to be done. People need to know so that they can plan. And the other question I want to bring to the minister's attention is this. On urgent processing, this is a real problem. The government indicates that urgent processing through the inquiry line will be dealt with within 48 hours. The reality is anywhere between at least 1 week, 10 days or more. I have multiple cases where people can't get urgent processing. And by nature, the situation is urgent, but it's not being processed accordingly. So my question to the minister is this. Will he commit to ensure that urgent processing with cases is actually dealt with the processing time of 48 hours?
We'll do everything we can to get back to urgent processing timelines for urgent cases. I think for many reasons that we've outlined, some of the processing challenges we've had has slowed us down. I'll do everything I can to get back to a 48-hour timeline
when that
as quick as
doesn't
possible.
happen, what do we do? How do we deal with constituents who are literally, in desperate need? What do we do? Where do we go?
The reality of the situation that I work in, and look, for urgent cases, to answer your question, if you're not able to get it through the MED line, please get in touch with me if you need to for the truly urgent cases. I will say the number of urgent cases coming through, given our commitments to resettle some of the most vulnerable people and given certain challenging life circumstances with such immigration ambition, are coming through to me in larger numbers than they ever have before.
Thank you. I'm running out of time. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I wanted to get one more in.
We will now proceed to Ms. Rempel-Garner for 5 minutes. Ms. Rempel-Garner, you can please begin.
Thank you. It's always a short time. Ms. Fox, in the lead up to the events of late July and August 2021, When did your department first become aware that Afghanistan was likely to fall to the Taliban?
Thank you for the question. I think that, we have always worked extremely closely with all of our security partners and with global affairs. And so I think that what the department did is actively participate in all the dialogue that took place in the lead up.
Would you say it was several months prior to the fall of Afghanistan?
I'd have to maybe just turn to a colleague just to see if there's, I wasn't there at the time, that's why it's hard to answer that question in terms of.
Just briefly, please.
Yeah. Okay, so we can maybe get back to you in terms of the time frame. I would say that.
Would it be safe to say probably a couple, 2 or 3 months prior to the fall that it was a risk?
Well, yes. I think there's always, there's always risks in Afghanistan, and that's kind of something that's always been top of mind.
Your government would have been aware that there was
I think so.
A need to resettle persons. When did your department provide advice to the government regarding the need to, or potential need to resettle Afghans with a relationship to Canada due to a potential fall of the country?
Well, I think like any sort of crisis and emergency management situation, the department would be working in lockstep with other security agencies to map out exactly what are some of the potential avenues, what are some of the policy responses, and we would have provided advice around those issues.
IRCC Islamabad, it's my understanding that they provided or issued a notice to some Afghan nationals suggesting that they apply for a temporary public policy to resettle to Canada sometime in July. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. On what date did your department begin to select Afghan nationals with a relationship to Canada for evacuation to Canada?
On the precise date, I'd have to get back to the committee on a precise date.
The reason why I ask these questions is just to follow up, Minister, on your line of questions with my colleague, Mr. Redekop. You've made some fairly aggressive assertions around your department's response and the adequacy of the response. And you did admit that perhaps the department should be doing biometric data selection, et cetera, ahead of time, and that would have helped resettle people. Given your deputy minister's comments on providing advice to the government ahead of time, do you think it would be unfair to say that perhaps the government dropped the ball in the timeline on selecting Afghan nationals, given that what you said, like some of this biometric data, et cetera, could have been done ahead of time?
So no, I don't think it's a fair assertion to say that any ball has been dropped. I think there are times when I wish we could get people here more quickly. I will always wish that.
Do you think more people could have been brought to Canada and not be in the situation that you outlined, which is now that we have significantly more difficulty evacuating them? Had your government acted on the advice of the department and perhaps not called a federal election in the middle of this crisis?
I actually think that federal election was one of the most important moments in terms of the success of the Afghan mission. And with respect to getting animated with one of my colleagues, the difference between the conservative and liberal commitments on the numbers we're willing to take was extraordinary. Us committing to 40,000, conservatives committing to 0.
Thank you. Ms. Fox, given the minister's assertion, did the department feel that the federal election, the call of the federal election, and the government being in caretaker mode, was your department hampered in its efforts to resettle Afghan nationals during the fall of Kabul during the 2021 federal election?
I would say that the caretaker convention allows the department to react, all departments to react to any health and safety emergency, no matter what, whether an election is on. So it allows us to continue that important work regardless of an election.
Did the caretaker mode hinder the department's ability to make timely responses on the criteria by which the government was selecting persons for resettlement or evacuation to Canada?
Again, I would say that during the caretaker mode, ministers are still ministers and deputies still have access to their ministers in order to move the department's urgent business on all fronts.
Do you think it was appropriate, or did you provide the government with advice regarding the appropriateness of calling a federal election during the fall of Kabul, given the resettlement priorities that were precipitated by the fall of Kabul?
Public service doesn't give advice to the government on when to call an election.
Were any concerns raised about the call of an election during the resettlement crisis?
Like I said, we have an ability to continue to govern in any period of an election to deal with a health or an emergency situation, and we continue to provide services and programs throughout.
Do you believe your predecessor, Minister Menachino, did a good job in this situation?
Yes, I do. I believe that he did a good job when he
Thank you,
committed
Chair.
initially to bring in 20,000 Afghan refugees and then to influence the Liberal Party's platform to double that commitment to 40,000.
Thank you. We will now end this panel with Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 5 minutes.
And thank you to Minister and the officials here. Minister, there is a recent announcement about the Indo-Pacific region. If we look at the region served by Chandigarh and Islamabad offices in this Indo-Pacific region provides a major source of newcomers to Canada. And it's also my understanding that the government is investing nearly $75 million to this region to meet those ambitious targets that you want to achieve. Could you please tell me what exactly it means for the people that are represented by the region served by Islamabad and Chandigarh when these offices were earlier open for visa processing and were closed in the past years?
So there will be certain decisions that roll out as a result of the spending decisions as to how to allocate that $75 million. But the purpose of making this investment was to grow our people-to-people ties in the region and diversify our interests for social and economic reasons to allow for more people to be coming from those regions to Canada and to speed up the processing times in particular. So there's 4 different locations that we will be focused on. You mentioned Chandigarh and Islamabad. As well, part of the same announcement was our spaces in Delhi and in Manila as well. And in addition to growing the potential workforce in those spaces, we will also be adding a complement of staff to our global network to focus on applications coming from the Indo-Pacific region more broadly. In addition, we plan to launch initiatives to boost recruitment through the International Student Program, so we can continue to attract more people from the Indo-Pacific region who will come to Canada as international students, many of whom I expect will transition to permanent residency over time. I think it's a wonderful thing for Canada, and I think it will reduce processing times in the region more broadly.
Minister, on the other hand, diversity is the key to Canada, and if we look at outside Quebec, we need the Francophonie immigration to increase. And when it comes to BC Francophonie Association, very near and dear to me, and they have always raised this concern. And I'm just asking you, are there any efforts that are made to meet those targets of 4.4% outside of Quebec?
Oui, absolument. C'est une
Yes, indeed, it's a priority for me and for our government. Just to show you how much I have worked to improve the quality of my French, and thank you to our parliamentary secretary, Marie-France, who helps teach me French, and Alexis Brunel-Duceppe teaches me a good deal as well. It's essential. If I wish to ensure social cohesion across Canada with a plan for bringing in newcomers, it's important to dovetail these, and it's important to ensure that Francophone newcomers come in sufficient number to support the weight of Francophone Canada. It's important to have them sent across Canada. It's important to open the DIEP office, as we have, to support innovation in the matter of bringing in French-speaking newcomers, Francophones from Africa. There are many opportunities that Canada has if we continue down the path of bringing in more Francophone newcomers. It's a good thing for the people coming in, but it's an even better thing for Canada across the country.
Minister, recently you announced some important measures to help solve labor shortage, when it comes to particular trades, and you have included 16 new occupations. Could you please elaborate on how these additional NOC codes or categories will allow Canada to bring in global talent in some of the high-demand sectors?
This is really important, and we've got the 1-minute sign from the chair, so I'll try to be quick. We made an announcement very recently to expand the express entry system to 16 new occupations, including occupations ranging from heavy equipment operators to chefs to estheticians to trucking and transportation and many others as well. What's really important in the labor shortage context that we're living through right now is that we expand opportunities for different sectors that have very, very high demands to continue to share in the benefits of immigration. When I look at the transportation sector in particular, this is a sector that enables economic growth across the economy. They are screaming for people like so many other sectors are right now, and by opening up the opportunity to benefit from immigration, we're going to help sustain certain industries that will grow the economy as a whole. I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm going to continue to work with our colleagues at ESDC, provincial partners, and stakeholders across the country to better understand how we can continue to expand access to immigration to help grow the economy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. With this panel comes to an end, and on behalf of all the members of this committee, I really want to thank you for your time and for all the work which you do on behalf of all Canadians to make sure that we have a vibrant immigration system here in this country. So we will suspend the meeting for a few minutes to allow you to leave, and then we will have some time with the officials, and then we will vote on the subs.
Okay,
thank
merci
you,
tout le monde.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody.
We will now straight go into a round of questioning with the officials. We will start our first panel. If I can have members' attention, please. We will start with our first round of questioning, and we will begin with Mr. Kimmich. Mr. Kimmich, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. Please begin.
So sorry again about my voice, but you're going to have no choice. There's a line in the supplementary estimates, more money for funding to increase the reach of temporary foreign worker program inspections. It's about $271,000 with change. How many inspections are being done in person versus virtually right now?
Yeah, there is definitely a line item in the SUPs on TFW inspections, and we'll have to get you the specific data because I don't want to give you stats that don't represent the full picture of how many in person and how many virtual.
Okay, so I would like just the total number of inspections being done on each one, and if possible, broken down by province as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. My next question.
Yeah, and I should just note maybe just that this is supports with our other department, Economic, Social and Development Canada, ESCCC in Service Canada. They run the TFW program, but we do have some funding to allow these inspections. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I assumed there was a connection there. On the Afghans who are being brought to Canada, the minister keeps quoting the $25,000 at 25,000 people, the 40,000 target, and we've spent a lot of time focusing on the interpreters who helped Canadian forces while on the ground in Afghanistan as the target families who, first of all, we wanted to bring here. But what about the families of LCAs, Language and Cultural Advisors? These are Canadians, I think all of them naturalized Canadians like myself, who served in uniform for Canada. Many of their family members are still either trapped in Afghanistan or in the region. What is the department doing to assist them?
Absolutely. So maybe I would start by saying there's sort of, and I think you're aware of this, but 3 main categories of how Afghans are coming through. So CIMM through the family of interpreters, and then the humanitarian program, which has seen the bulk of the arrival, so over 14,000 through the humanitarian stream. And absolutely, we appreciate the vulnerability of these clients, and we're working through the various ways in which we can, through any of these 3 streams, getting them through and back to Canada. The reality, as the minister noted, is the situation on the ground is complex and it's extremely difficult to get people out.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, but LCAs are here in Canada.
Yeah.
Their families are over there.
Exactly.
These individuals have top secret level clearance for the duties they fulfilled for Canadian forces. In many cases, the Taliban are actively looking for their family members in order for them to be able to put pressure on them to have these LCAs who are in Canada reveal Canada's secrets to them. Like they're using their family members as pawns in this game, which is why I'm asking. If you don't have an answer here, perhaps you could provide a brief, because I do have other questions specific to the sub-Bs that I want to continue on.
I think the answer would be we are working with the families, that we are looking at the risks on the ground, and because of what you have articulated, it is extremely challenging for people to get travel documents to get out, and if they manage to get out and get into Pakistan, for instance, sometimes because they arrived irregularly into Pakistan, they have very difficulty, lots of challenges getting ways to get out because of the exit requirements of some of those countries in that region. And so we are absolutely aware of the challenges and working towards safe passages to help family members at risk.
Okay. In the sub-Bs, typically in the sub-Bs are provided the departmental results for the previous spending is provided. Those are missing here. I believe they're also missing all across government because the last results that are available on the Treasury Board Secretariat's website are 2020, 2021, and we're supposed to have 2021, 2022. Where are those results? Does the department have them? Have you submitted them to the Treasury Board? And why don't we have them?
To my awareness, there's nothing different with this cycle than any previous cycle, and the department results report would have been submitted this fall. And I believe I have a copy here, so I'm happy to.
So the Treasury Board Secretariat's website doesn't have any of that information, which is why I'm asking for it, because it does a pretty good job of providing them in a digital format so you can compare to previous years. In those departmental plans, though, because the minister talked about a lot about how all these extra people and all this extra money is going to improve processing times. The problem is, in that same departmental plan calls for a reduction of 1,000 FTEs and almost $1 billion to be reduced in spending over the next 2 years. That's part of the planned spending, the long-term trend for this department. How can you square the fact that the department is being staffed up and budgeted up in order to reduce the backlog? The backlog has not gotten a lot shorter, while there's also a very high expectation of large volumes to increase into the future. The annual report on immigration calls for large volumes of applications, while resources are expected to be reduced according to what the minister and the department has basically put forward to the Treasury Board.
Okay, so I think I would start by saying two things. The first thing I would say is our annual report and our levels plan really focuses on permanent residency. And I think it's important for the committee to appreciate that for permanent residency, we get funding for the amount, and it is a capped amount. We determine that number, and it's a mix of economic immigration, refugees, and so we map out that number. So every year, the department, through its processing, has been able to meet its target. So 401,000 over the last few years. So 401, 432 this year. So that planned growth, we get funding to be able to have the processing capacity to meet those permanent residency levels plans that we do. What's kind of on top of that is the temporary residents, which are uncapped, which speaks to a little bit of the volumes that you can that we see right now. And so what we have done, you're absolutely right. In light of the backlogs, in light of the pressures, in light of the increases, we have increased our FTE complement to be able to deal with the backlog so that we can actually start putting a dent in it. But long-term
planning,
interrupting,
Ms. Fox.
We've got
Time
to think
is up
about
for Mr.
transformation.
We will now proceed to MP Ali. MP Ali, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
I don't think I was speaking. Yeah.
Mr. Dhaliwal would take it?
Mr.
Okay.
Dhaliwal will take over.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to you again. My first question is, can we be following up on, but earlier it was brought to the attention of the Minister. There was an MED section of the IRCC that was very helpful to our constituents when members of parliament were able to talk to them. I want to commend them, the work that they did, not only solving the problems for our constituents, but in fact also mentoring our staff on those files. That was very key because the experience that I bring out because of my office being the busiest in whole of Canada. At some point in time, are you thinking of bringing that back so that MPs can have a similar access to MED to help their constituents?
Well, I think thank you for that question. And Madam Chair, I think I would start by saying that the department absolutely recognizes that because of the backlogs and because of the impact on people, the client service aspect of our work needs to be reemphasized and it needs to be prioritized because I can only imagine putting myself in the shoes of people who are applying to come here either permanently or temporarily, what that means for them in terms of the unknown. And so I think there has been and there continues to be an emphasis on what that client experience can be. And that includes kind of looking at putting information on the website so people understand kind of what the backlog looks like and what it means for them, looking at client trackers so they can actually have a better sense of where their application is in the mix, and then what types of support services can we put in place in the department to be able to respond either to MPs or to individuals who call us for information about their cases. We have groups dedicated for things like conferences or humanitarian and compassionate needs. And very recently, we've been working with a lot of you on setting up an MP system where the department would make available time so that MPs can come to the department with a set time and set dedicated resources to be able to work through the very challenging files that you all have to work through. And so these are some of the elements that we're trying to do to be more responsive to what we're seeing. And the reality is, because the department faces the backlog that it faces now, people go through a number of different channels in order to try to get information on their cases. They call the client center, they try to call their MPs, they may do an ATIP request, so it creates even more volume, right? So we, as a department, we have a responsibility to get through the backlog and then look at the service standards and determine, are they the right service standards going forward? And then how do we actually modernize our systems? And the minister spoke about the digitization and electronic applications. These are ways that we're going to be able to be less reliant on paper-based systems, and then be a bit more focused on how do you actually process in a more efficient way using technology. And that's not done overnight, and I think that's why there has been an FTE growth to manage the volume that we're facing, but I think we have to think about what does a modern system look like, and we're dedicated to doing that.
Thank you, but I tell you that department was a key success, and I would love to, you to consider that, bringing it back. So let me focus on the 500,000 permanent resident targets in 2025. Could you talk about department's long-term focus on economic growth, particularly when it comes to small cities and towns beside the large urban regions to settle them?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I think I would say that obviously, with the labor market shortage that the country is facing right now, we have been extremely focused on economic immigration, but also looking at how do you look at economic integration where not everybody ends up in the Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, right? We have to think about what are some of the regional programs that have given us some success. And a good example of that, I would say, would be the Atlantic Immigration Program, where I think I heard a stat when we were last in the Atlantic where some of the universities and the businesses told us that for every 10 workers that exit the market, only 7 enter. And so programs designed to bring economic immigrants to those areas of the country are absolutely essential. Another example of some of the programming that we've looked at, and I would say the Atlantic Immigration Program was actually a pilot for 5 years or so, and then it matured into a full program. And so how can we kind of use those examples to look at rural and northern needs, and how can we kind of better match? I think that that's an important lesson for us. And I would say most recently in New Brunswick, we launched a pilot program with some of the big employers, Le Groupe Savoie, Quick Aquaculture, the Irvings, to look at what are their needs in their region and how can we as a department work with them, private sector and the province, to actually bring workers to those communities that may not have the ability to sustain from within their own populations. And so we have to be creative in that. And I will also say we have to think about l'immigration francophone dans le contexte.
Francophone immigration in the context of the work we've undertaken, and we will ensure flexibility in the year to come, allowing us to be more creative on this front as well. It's a good opportunity.
Gender-based analysis audit, that report that came out, and the internal changes that you have made based on that policy.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And I think the AG, and I think it didn't take the AG, I think just internal to government departments, we have to look at how we do apply GBA Plus to our programs and policies. And I think that in our department, it is absolutely essential. And so we've been working very closely with our anti-racism secretariat within the department to look at not only how our internal practices are impacting our employees, but in addition to that, how do our programs and policies, and I know members raised issues like Francophone African students, and what are some of the barriers that exist because of programs or policies within the department. And I think what the GBA Plus lens can give us...
Sorry for interrupting. Ms. Fox, time is up for Mr. Dhaliwal. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desept for 6 minutes. Mr. Brunel Desept, you can please begin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to be sure, you're guaranteeing that no funds sent to Mackenzie, nothing's been spent on Mackenzie by RCC since 2019. According to the contract information we have, that's the case. There were only 2 contracts. And what were they again, 2018, 2019? It was for Journey Labs. These were a modernization effort for transforming immigration systems. It was nothing to do with immigration levels per se, but rather innovation practices that we were looking to adopt within the department to improve our procedures. So nothing since 2019? All right, thank you. 2019, right. Are you also able to assure me that there has been no personnel movement from directors at IRCC who are working in Francophone Quebec? What I can tell you is that there are a number of employees in that organization. I'm not aware of any changes. I met the team recently, I met with the team myself, and I have no information to that effect, suggesting there would be a change of manager, director, or usually I work with them to some extent. I've met some of the managers, and I haven't seen any francophones being replaced by anglophones at that level. As I mentioned, there has been a new director named to the research sector, but that's within our policy team, not directly linked to the Francophone immigration section, but that would be within the department. Perhaps that's what was being referred to, but it's not within the Francophone immigration team itself. All right. Well, maybe we'll talk about it later. Since 2015, Quebec has carried out a study on positions that are open in the regions, rather than asking businesses to make requests for temporary foreign workers each time they need them. Why not just have them participate in your levels of TFWs? Because it's like repeating the same work over and over again, right? Thank you so much. I would say that, yes, indeed, we always want to work with provinces and territories to avoid duplication, as you've said, when it comes to labor market studies. I think that ESD has set up some flexible approaches to their TFW intake for Quebec. For example, prolonging the time for which the worker can stay with a specific organization, and they have, for some cases, suppressed the 6% of employment insurance, for example. They've done a number of things to try to address this issue. We have as well, for example, we have a program to bring economic level immigration into Quebec, and working with Quebec, we said, why don't we bring people in faster, at least on a temporary basis, and then get them on track to transition to permanent residence based on the needs of companies in Quebec. There were some articles once again in the press this morning on this issue. I'm sure you're aware of it all. There are employers who are very worried about the delays. There is a Quebec-Canada agreement on employment. There's an agreement for Quebec. So Quebec, of course, knows what the needs within Quebec are by region of Quebec and by economic sector and labor needs. Why do you have to go back to the employers to ask the same questions? You can get the answers from the province itself. Why not just avoid these labor market studies about TFWs? It would save a lot of time for businesses and for TFWs who are waiting to get in. Why not just use Quebec's data? I know that it's all very fine to run numerous studies and get people involved. It's, work making, of course, but it doesn't make much sense, this duplication. I think it's a matter of balancing the need for labor, recognizing that temporary foreign workers will be able to come in and fill essential positions. And there are 1 million of vulnerable Canadians who also are looking for work. So we need to remain inclusive for Canadians who are trying to find their place in the labor force. But why couldn't Quebec do that job rather than allowing Ottawa to do it? It's already being carried out, these studies in Quebec. I understand the 1 million, but don't you think we should just get rid of the labor market assessments? I would say that we'll continue to work with Quebec. Very good. That's good. That's a good answer. Mr. Fraser announced and seemed very pleased with himself last spring, a program of 1,000 aeroplan miles to bring in 10,000 Ukrainians. How many people actually came in on that? I don't have the figures. Every month, about 300 tickets. Yes, the Miles for Migrants program, 300 since the month of June, because that was launched in June. So June, July, August, September, October, November, that's 6 times 300. More. I can give you the figures. So, okay, good. Thank you. So we'll get those figures. People tell us that since the Ukrainian crisis fiasco and the Ukrainian fiasco as well at IRCC, the 15 to 25% of agents on IRCC were sent to handle Afghan files when that happened. people have been saying then that IRCC should have an emergency intervention plan if there's an international crisis.
J'oublie des fois qu'il y a du temps.
Thank
Merci.
you. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan for 6 minutes. Ms. Kwan, you can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the officials. Just to follow up on the question around processing delays for African applicants as well as those from Iran, could the officials provide the median as well as the average processing time for TRVs and PR applications along with study permits for applicants from Africa and Iran for the last 6 years? So minus the 2 years of COVID, because basically those years, I understand things were in a standstill, but then just so that we have some baseline to compare it to. And also, if I could also get the officials to provide to the committee, the turnaround time for PR applications waiting for instructions to create the PR portal or to have the photo uploaded so that they could get their COPR. We're seeing unbelievable delays. People are literally just waiting for these steps so they can move forward with their application, and they're stuck there. They can't get on the portal, upload their photos and stuff that they're supposed to upload to move the thing. So what is the hang up there is really what I'm trying to get at. Also, on the issue around the newly announced 3,000 family member spots for the group of 5 of Afghan privately sponsored stream, could the officials advise if those spots are fully subscribed? And if yes, when did it become full? If no, where it is at now? I'll pause here, and if you have answers, I'll take them, but if not, I'll move on with my other questions.
Okay, so maybe I'll start where you ended, which is on the Afghans 3,000 group of 5. I think that it is fully subscribed, I think I would answer, but we're going through the subscription because there was a couple of cases of kind of duplication. So we're going through to see whether or not we've reached that capacity or whether or not because of that few duplications, it's going to open up some spots. But we're very close to it, if not at the 3,000.
Yeah, if you can advise the committee, I'd like to know exactly when it became fully subscribed.
Okay.
Because to my knowledge, people are actually trying to get into that program very early on, literally within the first couple of weeks when the program was announced, and it was pretty well fully subscribed. So it really goes to show you the demand and the need, and I'm just trying to figure out what the lay of the land is. So, and then with respect to that, what is the anticipated timeline for processing? Privately sponsored refugee applications right now is sitting at about 3 years in terms of, at least 3 years in terms of processing. So what's the estimated timeline for these set of applications?
I think for the, what I would say is for Afghan processing, it's always a little bit challenging to put a specific time frame on it because depending on the location of the individuals, depending on the challenges to, sometimes it's not a question about the processing time frame.
Sorry,
right?
I appreciate that. I'm quickly running out of time. So I just need kind of like a quick answer. Do you have any anticipation or projection within your department how quickly these will be processed?
I think what we can say is we can give you the processing time that it would take for the department, but there are unknowns of elements we don't control.
Fair enough. And if you can give us that information, I would appreciate that. And will any of the resources allocated from the supplementary estimates assist with the processing of these applications? If so, how much?
Yeah, as part of the SUPs, the Afghan, it's actually a significant portion of the funding is going to Afghan refugees, including processing. It's $647 million.
Is that all for this stream, or is it for the,
it's for the
all
entire,
of it?
yeah.
So how is it broken down?
We can get you a breakdown of
If
how
you
the
could,
funding. Yep.
Thank you. 23.9 million of the supplementary estimates is allocated to address inventory backlog for PR applications. So will this be for the backlog, or is it for new applications to meet standard processing?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, pour...
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question. It's both. The funding that we hope to receive will help us work on complex cases in the backlog, which have been in the backlog for a certain number of years, but also to continue to work towards our service aims for express entry, family reunification, and so on. We want to ensure that we're able to respect service standards.
Allocated for the backlog and not for new applications? Just yes or no?
C'est un peu des deux, mais
A bit of both, as the minister mentioned. Immigration levels.
I apologize. Could we get a breakdown then how much is actually being allocated for the new applications and how much is for the backlog? And what is the expected time frame for the processing of these applications? How many do you expect that you would actually get through on both of those different streams? If you don't have that figure, you can provide it to the committee.
donc j'ai pas le détail.
So I don't have a breakdown what will be allotted when, but as the minister mentioned, for immigration levels, that's really the funding that we receive on an annual basis, on a yearly basis. So what we're aiming for in the supplementary estimates is principally to bring down the backlog.
Can provide us with the projected numbers of how many cases you think you'll get through with that amount of money. That would be appreciated. And then how many is still then sitting in the backlog untouched. With respect to IRCC allocated funding to the IOM, does IRCC allocate funding to the IOM to provide housing for Afghans Afghan refugees in third countries? And if yes, how much? And then in which country? In those third countries, and how many units of housing is being funded? Who is responsible for the allocation? And who can the families contact
Sorry
when
for
they've been
interrupting,
promised
Ms.
that
Kwan, your
housing, but
time
no
is-
provision of housing is made available to them? If you can provide that information to the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. With that, the rounds of questioning comes to an end, and we will have two votes on the supplementary estimates B 2022-2023. So can we please have members' attention to vote, please? Yes, Ms. Fox?
I think, Ms. Chair, I just wanted to confirm that we will provide that detail, the $2 million to the IOM. We will provide context to the committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. So we will be voting on supplementary estimates B 2022-2023. Shall vote 1B under Department of Citizenship and Immigration carry?
Yes.
On division.
On division.
Can we just group all the votes together on division?
Shall vote 5B?
On division.
Point of
Shall
order,
vote
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kimmich.
In the interest of time, can we just group all the votes into
It's
one?
just three, so I'll just
passed
be
on
very
division?
quick.
Oh,
I'll just be very quick. Shall vote 5B under Department of Citizenship and Immigration carry?
On division.
Carried on division. Shall vote 10B under Department of Citizenship and Immigration carry?
On division.
Carried on division. Shall vote 1B under Immigration and Refugee Board carry?
On division.
Carried on division. Shall I report the votes on the supplementary estimates B 2020-2023 to the House?
Yes. On division.
On division, I should. For appearing before the committee today. Thank you. Whenever we invite you. Yes, Mr. Ali.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Just since officials are here, I just wanted to request that could the department please provide the committee with the number and approval and rejection data for study permit applications from Pakistan and TRVs for 2021 and 2022. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll request that. On behalf of all the members of this committee, yes, Mr. McGuire.
Yes. Thanks. Like Mr. Ali, I've got some questions that I'd like to, will hand in to the clerk to be answered as well. Thank you.
Okay. Once we get them, then we will get them circulated. So with that, on behalf of all the members, I want to thank officials for appearing before the committee. Thank you for always coming whenever we invite you, and thank you for all the work which you do. It's not an easy department. So I know handling the immigration cases in my riding, so it's not an easy department. So with that, the meeting is now adjourned.